breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Hey, warmer from Evo! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN family podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ben Wilson. He does great work here at VSIN. He, much like myself, a man from the great state of Wisconsin. We're going to be chatting with him just about the postseason that we've got in front of us, truth be told, because this had to go up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. We did this before the final of the Brewers versus Dodgers game, but we're going to be talking about how the Brewers are facing a little bit of an uphill battle here against the LA Dodgers. He also mentioned that he was expecting quite a few one-run losses for the Milwaukee Brewers, and lo and behold, what happened in game number 1. And additionally, we're going to be chatting with him about what we're seeing on the American League side of things with the Seattle Mariners taking full control of that series over the Toronto Blue Jays, and we'll be recapping those games that we saw on Monday in the first segment. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis for game number 2 of Brewers versus Dodgers as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larsium, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever with EdgeBoost. 100% of gambling transactions do get approved, and when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in baseball on Monday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The Seattle Mariners take a very commanding 2-0 series lead as they take down the Toronto Blue Jays by kind of 10-3. Just a day where Trey Savage, well, he got savagely obliterated in this one. 5 runs allowed over the course of 4 innings as he gives up a 3-run homer in the first inning to Julio Rodriguez, his second home run of the postseason. From there, Louis Varland, he gives up a home run of his own to Ore Polanco as he inherited some runners from Savage, and that was Polanco's third home run in the postseason. His first home run not off of Tariq Scuba, by the way. Mason Fluharty from there gives up a run in a third of an inning. Braden Fisher, he allows a home run to Josh Naylor, his first of the postseason, as he gave up a pair of runs in his inning of work. Julio Rodriguez, not a single out of the bullpen. He gives up a run. Chris Bassett, hook, line, and sinker. He had you for 1 2/3 innings scoreless. Eric Lauer scoreless setting in. Logan Gilbert on short rest did not have it here. 3 runs, 2 of which were earned, given up in 3 innings. The bullpen had his back, though. How about Carlos Vargas, Emerson Hancock, and Edward Bizardo, all being able to come in for a pair of scoreless innings apiece? Hancock did give up 3 walks along the way, but Blue Jays very much tamed in this one, and that's the first over that we've seen in the championship series, as the Dodgers-Brewers game, that turned out to be a 2-1 slog. The Dodgers get the job done. How about what Blake Snell was able to do? 8 shutout innings. He punches out 10. Roki Sasaki from there, he gives up a pair of walks and he gives up a run. And Blake Trinan had to get the final out of the game. He was able to strike out Sal Frelick with the bases loaded in the 9th inning. So much underdressed there. And those were the lone 3 men that the Brewers left on base. They went 0 for 1 with men in scoring position, with Bryce Terang being the lone guy that committed it out with men in scoring position, other than the sacrifice fly of Jackson Trio that did score a run. But for the Brewers, actually a relatively well-pitched game, as for the LA Dodgers, they probably should have gotten more out of Quinn Priester, 4 scoreless innings, but Shohei Ohtani, I believe it was, maybe I'm mistaken, but there was a fly ball, it looked like it was going to fly over the fence, goes off the glove, hits the wall, and it was the weirdest, double play force out that I've ever seen in my life, but that's it. For Priester, he somehow, someway kept it clean through 4 innings, despite giving up 3 hits and 3 walks. Aaron Ashby is the opener, a scoreless inning, and then Chad Patrick gives up a solo home run to Freddie Freeman's first home run of the postseason in a third of an inning. Jared Koenig, 5 outs out of the bullpen, scoreless. Trevor McGill, scoreless inning. Abner Uribe walked 3, so he allowed a run, as the Dodgers, they could have really made this a little bit more violent. They leave 11 men on base. They go just 1 of 10 with men in scoring position, but they do take a 1-0 series lead in this series. And if you look at the last 7 days that we've had in postseason action, home teams are just 7-6 on the money line, with favorites going just 5-7. We had one pick'em game along the way as well. well, with the under going 7-6. So things are starting to get underwhelming and tight out there in the baseball playoffs, and things are always great on this podcast whenever we've got our man Ben Wilson aboard. He does such great work here at VSIN, and he joins me on the flip side right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN family podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ben Wilson aboard. He does such a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. He does a little bit of everything here at VSIN. He does a lot of our live betting shows. He's doing a tremendous job looking at the football scene as well. He also does second to none work with regards to play-by-play work, whether that be college basketball, indoor football. I know he's done some tennis in the past as well. You name it, he does it. A true 5-tool player. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first name, Ben, and underscore his last name, Wilson, another underscore, and then the number 1 altogether. And Ben, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, absolutely, Greg. And at least for me, being lucky enough to go to game 2 in Milwaukee back in our home state, it's funny. Usually, it's football season, getting ready for basketball, but this is about as checked out as I have been on the NFL since 2018, which coincidentally was the last time the Brewers and the Dodgers met up in the NLCS. So can't wait for this thing to get underway and see how it all plays out.
Absolutely, and we are doing this prior to game number 1 of Brewers versus Dodgers since they had the late game on Monday. But that said, what are you expecting from this series? Because you and me, Ben, we are both very optimistic Milwaukee Brewers fans, but I do fear that the Milwaukee Brewers are running into a little bit of a buzzsaw here, mainly because the big advantage that you'd think that the Brewers would have was their bullpen, but the Dodgers now have a $1 billion bullpen with Roki Sasaki, Tyler Glasnow and company coming out of it, and that very much corrects the big mistake that they had.
Sure thing. I think part of it, too, the Brewers were so fortunate just in the scheduling for how the DS played out. To get not only a day off between your normal, games 2 and 3 and then 4 and 5 like everybody does, but also the way that the TV schedule worked to get games 1 and 2 off. They could not have been any fresher going into a game 5. So that to me is my big question. You're about to see, you'll have the games 1 and 2 day off, but as this series gets toward the business end, having 3 straight games in LA. So that'll be, if you think about it, Greg, first time the Brewers will play, assuming the series goes at least 5, back-to-back-to-back games of any meaning, will basically be October 16th through the 18th here. That'll be the first time in almost 4 weeks that they'll have had a 3-game series that has meant anything. So that just naturally would worry me a little bit with how little they've gotten from the starting pitching. And honestly, this is going to come down to so much. Can Quinn Priester, as we kind of flip things forward a little bit later in the series, I'm assuming they're going to have him go game 3. We already know Peretti Peralta is lined up to start here in game 2. But that's the thing for me, how the usage goes for him on Priester's end of it, having been so poor in his first start at Wrigley when he was just amazing. To win 20 straight starts or have 20 straight wins for your team and not lose a decision over 20 starts is pretty much unheralded in today's era of Major League Baseball. It really starts for me on that end, Greg, just knowing that you're right. The relief pitching is going to be way more tested and will not have the benefit of the scheduling the way that it was in the NLDS.
Yep, it certainly is going to be a question, and I was thinking that Priester was going to be the bulk guy in Game 1. If he goes in Game 1, then it would be Jose Quintana in Game number 3 as well, and I think both of those guys are relatively similar, and I think either of those guys just face such an uphill battle with facing off against the LA Dodgers because those are both very much pitch-to-contact guys, and with the LA Dodgers, as we know, this is a team with just all sorts of firepower in that lineup.
It is, and I think the one thing, as good as a guy like Hiroki Sasaki has been, and you kind of figure, the hitting is really going to test Milwaukee because so far they really haven't given up any big innings. It's just been a lot of solo homers here and there. The Cubs really in a 5-game series put together 2 crooked numbers essentially. It was all early in those respective games within the series. I certainly would look at this series probably being more of an over series just in general. And as good as Sasaki has been, as good as some of these arms have really emerged for the Dodgers, this was still a bottom 10 bullpen just by ERA and WHIP over the course of the season. I'm not willing to sit here and say that there's no way the Brewers are able to do anything against this Dodgers bullpen, and it's going to completely come down to the guys at the start. But, from a betting perspective, let's see what the prices are. You're probably going to get some really good prices on the Brewers at Dodger Stadium specifically, just playing game to game when you're thinking about the fact Brewers were already plus 180 or so for the series in general. And then some of these in-game prices, I'd imagine if you get some slow starts, the amount of arms that'll be used, the more that they are seen as this series continues. I would like some in-game overs here. It kind of speaks to not only what you just talked about and how good the Dodger bats are, but also I'm not completely buying that the Dodgers bullpen with their struggles and lack of depth is necessarily just going to come out and completely shut down and neuter this Milwaukee offense.
Yep, and with the Milwaukee Brewers, it's so big that they just do such an amazing job of moving the line. As we both know, this has not been too much of a home run hitting team, but they just find a way to be able to get on base. And how big do you think that is in this time of year? Because I do feel like when it comes to playoff baseball, especially with the weather getting colder, though, playing in Los Angeles and playing in a weather-controlled environment in Milwaukee, it means a little bit less than if you're playing in, say, Yankee Stadium. I do think that that is very meaningful because a lot of guys, they just, for lack of a better term, they start to choke a little bit more in the postseason. They try to do a little bit too much, and for the Brewers, there's not as much pressure for them to be able to get the deep ball because they've been used to all season long playing station-to-station baseball.
And I'll say, as far as the mentality for Milwaukee coming in, like, if I'm playing for the Brewers, if I've got a futures ticket on Milwaukee, there is no manager I would rather have in this underdog role than Pat Murphy. It honestly, I think, is a perfect setup for them just from a macro perspective of really leaning into what the identity of the team has been since March 29th, which has been, this underdog average, above average Joes has kind of been the postseason mantra now for this Milwaukee team. And I mean, what better opponent, right, to have it against than an LA team that is just kind of already being penciled in here to the World Series. My question really in the betting markets or the national media has been, will this be Dodgers in 5 or 6, right? Like that just seems to be a foregone conclusion. So I would expect, the way the end of the series against Chicago played out, it was 3 pretty poor hitting games for Milwaukee, and they got fortunate to have such a great bullpen game, and really a great bullpen games in games 2 and 5 for the Brewers. And you could honestly argue outside of those first 2 innings in game 1, this Brewer offense really resembled nothing like it looked like in the first 162 games of the regular season, with all that offense pretty much coming on the solo homer. So I'm willing to give them sort of the benefit of the doubt, believing that certainly regresses a little bit more positively. And you've gone now through a full series that was so tense. Having been there at game 2, the environment at American Family Field, it was just insane. And not just because it was postseason baseball, but because of the rivalry against the Cubs. And the fans there, like, they remember that series so well from 18. The Brewers, if you remember that, Greg, I know you do. Yes. And Milwaukee pretty much had, not to say they had the series won, but they were up 2-1 at Dodger Stadium, game 4. Josh Hader was in his era where you could throw him 3-4 innings of just hitless baseball. And he gave them like 3 innings of extra inning relief. Offense couldn't do anything. They lost that game 4 in, I think, 13 innings and end up losing the series in 7. And we're up in game 7 as well. So fan base is going to be just as juiced for this series as they were for the Cubs. And you think about that, having the home field, I'm certainly one to believe that as much as I obviously believe this is a much tougher test than the Cubs, I'm not sitting here and believing at all that this will just be a rollover series for Milwaukee. And if anything, if you had to make me predict how deep the series goes, I kind of feel like we go 7 here. And it ends up being kind of a coin toss game 7, just like we had back in 2018. So accordingly on the betting, like, not only do I think this would be a good kind of in-game overs series totals wise, but I also think you're good to look at some of these alts, maybe some exactas to get some good payouts there.
I think that that's a great look, and I will go out on a limb and say this. I do not think that Clayton Kershaw will give up a home run to the pitcher like we saw in 2018 when Brandon Woodruff hit that home run. That's what I remember the most about that series. I want to try to flush out all the bad. I just still remember that Brandon Woodruff home run off of Clayton Kershaw in game 1. That was good, clean family fun right there. I was actually with a high school buddy out here in lovely Las Vegas, and we could not believe it. So, yeah. That was great. As Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSIN, is joining me on the Baseball Betting Show. And like I said, we're doing this prior to knowing the game 1 result of Dodgers versus Brewers. But we now know that the Seattle Mariners are up 2-0 on the Toronto Blue Jays, a Mariners team that you thought that they were probably going to concede game number 1 because they used every single resource that they could to pull out that extra inning win against the Detroit Tigers on Friday. They turn around on Sunday. They get the job done. They get to the Toronto Blue Jays for 2 3-run homers on Monday. Just what do you make on the Seattle Mariners team? Because barring something extreme, looks like they're going to be going to the World Series.
Right. Well, I think it's sort of twofold. I went to one of the ALDS games in New York. The game 3, the Yankees got the win, and I think part of it is maybe we got, just because of how hyped that series was and how the assumption was, and I've been on the public record of saying I thought Toronto would be a one-and-done team in the postseason and thought between them and Milwaukee, Blue Jays were certainly more of the paper tigerish team of the smaller market teams that won a ton of games and got the one seed. It was amazing, though, sitting there in person watching the Blue Jays and even being at the game they lost in the ALDS. The quality of arms that they were throwing out and just like the lack of name guys and how they were just somehow able to consistently get out of jams, pitch really well in high leverage situations. Something about that just sort of felt like anecdotally, Greg, really hard to just hard to naturally sustain. And I mean, Vlad Jr. pretty much owns the Yankees, and he was amazing in that series. And certainly thought that series win, not to take anything away from Toronto, but I did feel like watching it had more to do with poor managing, just ineptitude from the Yankee side of it than it did just feeling like the Blue Jays were this juggernaut. So I think that's part of it, not totally changing my tune on Toronto and flipping to the opposite extreme. That's always really dangerous, especially in baseball and the randomness of these series. But on the flip side, I mean, we've watched Seattle be this uber team streak, honestly, for the last 3 years now. And we kind of wondered, what could the Mariners do if they got this streak going at the right time? And I know this isn't the first playoff appearance they've had in the stretch, but certainly the way they have, seems like the entire team is just a collection of glue guys that just forces deep counts, have quality at bats. And that has felt like a domino effect now wearing off. So I'm not really, overly surprised outside of the fact that the Mariners' arms looked as good as they did in game one, given how taxed they were at the end of the ALDS. But I think this is kind of more of a betting lesson of, you think about a team and trying to not overreact series to series and making presumptions, because we see all the time that these series in the Major League Baseball postseason often go very much unexpected based on the popular or presumed opinion of a lot of people. And I think that's just something to remember. Not that I'm sitting here saying I've got a Mariners to sweep ticket in my pocket. I don't. I stayed away, but just a good betting reminder, I think, out there for folks who are ready to crown the Blue Jays after beating a very flawed Yankees team.
Yep, and what sort of a chance would you give the Mariners against either the Milwaukee Brewers or the LA Dodgers? And I am going to be honest with you. I think that it's going to be the LA Dodgers. I think that they are the most dominant team remaining here in the postseason. But I think regardless of if the Mariners were to face off against the Brewers or the Dodgers, that would make for a very exciting World Series.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we already know, right? The Dodgers will be favored against anybody here. We know it's the favorite against the Brewers. They'd be favored prohibitively against Seattle. Obviously, Seattle would be a small, even having the weaker of the two records, they'd still be a small favorite against Milwaukee if you got it to a World Series. What a crazy World Series that would be, by the way, Greg. Where the Milwaukee franchise started.
The old Seattle Pilots.
Yes, 1969, memorialized in the great Jim Bouton book, Ball 4. I don't know if you ever had a chance to read that. It's basically like a running diary of the 1969 Seattle Pilots. Just a fascinating book that it's still pretty funny. It holds up here in 2025. That would be amazing. I mean, I'd obviously love, I know we'd love to see that selfishly, but I think reality is no matter who the opponent for Seattle, they will be completely live. And I know we've said this in the past and gotten burned. You can kind of laugh at us for being in that value camp. But if it's Seattle, LA Dodgers, value 100% will be on the Mariners. Might not totally come to fruition. You might be better off playing those game to game, but I would not expect that to be a quick, easy, workmanlike series whatsoever for the Dodgers, if that is indeed the case. And if it's Mariners Brewers, flip a coin 50 times. I seriously have no clue, because Mariners probably would deserve to be a slight favorite, but Brewers would still have home field. Remember that, if that is the case. And man, what an insane series for both franchises that would be, with a first World Series title on the line in that case.
And one of the best guests that I have on this podcast has joined me all year long, Curtis Rogers. He is a pre- and post-game host for the Seattle Mariners, so I will selfishly be very much rooting that on, and it is going to be incredible to see what we get here for the rest of the postseason. I know that you, Ben, are going to be locked in on all of it. You've done an amazing job all season long. You've joined me quite a bit, and everything that you do at VSIN and with your play-by-play work is second to none, so let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it as always, Greg, at Ben_Wilson_1. College basketball. I laugh because I can't believe it's already here.
Less than 3 weeks away, baby.
I know. I have a preseason game coming up this weekend. A lot of those games are on ESPN Plus, so usually we'll post whenever I'm doing those games, and doing a lot of college sports right now. NBA G League as well, which starts up in a few weeks as well. So, man, what a time to be alive.
It is a great time to be alive, and We are going to be getting the sports equinox relatively soon as well, once the NBA season starts as well. So we are hitting just such a peak of the sports calendar. Ben, he's got his finger on the pulse of it all, and he does such a great job every single time he joins this podcast. So big thanks to Ben for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis for Game 2 of Dodgers versus Brewers as we touch them all.
Did you know your credit card points and miles can lose value to inflation? Credit card companies often reduce the redemption value of your points and miles. Now, imagine a credit card with rewards that can grow in value. With the Gemini credit card, you can earn Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos instantly with no annual fee. Every swipe at the store or gas pump earns you instant rewards deposited straight to your account. Plus, sign up now for a $200 Bitcoin bonus to kickstart your rewards. Visit Gemini.com/card today. Check out the link in the description for more information on rates and fees. Again, if you're looking to invest in Bitcoin but don't know where to start, the Gemini credit card makes it easy.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by our good friend Ben Wilson, who does such amazing work here at VSIN. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. He did so once again today, and he, much like myself, a Wisconsinite, hoping for the best for the Brewers, but probably prepared for the worst. A big thanks to Ben for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis for Game 2 of Brewers versus Dodgers as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_D1. Very easy to be able to go in the Las Vegas rotation order when you've got one game on the betting board. So how about if we hit it right here? 9:51, 9:52 on the card. It is the Dodgers and the Brewers doing battle with homestanding Brewers throwing out their Freddie Peralta, and you got Yoshinobu Yamamoto going for the Dodgers. Mostly seeing 7 with regards to a total, with an over between -115 to a -120, under between even and -110. Seeing a few straight 7.5s with a under of -120 and the over at even money. Dodgers are between -115 to -120 on the money line. Brewers are anywhere between -102 to a +108, and I'm going to go with the Dodgers here. I did set them at a -129 for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He just has been so great on the road thus far this season. He owns a 2.49 ERA overall this season with 10.4 strikeouts. He's only given up 0.7 home runs per 9 innings. Not as much of a threat with the Milwaukee Brewers, as the Brewers are in the bottom half of the big leagues with regards to home runs on a per at-bat basis. But that said, for Yamamoto, his ERA goes down to 2.13 with 0.6 home runs allowed per 9 innings away from him. Was given up about 3 or so walks per 9 innings, but very rock solid. Now, this is a Brewers team that ever since the All-Star break, they're averaging about 5 runs per contest. That is in the top 3 in the National League, but we've noticed that they've went a little bit cold here in the postseason. They really don't have anyone other than Christian Yelich. They gave them more than 22 home runs between the regular season and the postseason. You obviously have plenty of guys. They're going to be able to move the line for the team in a Brewers uniform and a Brewers uniform only. Isaac Collins, along with Sal Frelick, Yelich, who I mentioned before, William Contreras, Bryce Terang, all these guys able to give you above a 340 with regards to their on-base percentage. Jackson Trio, not so great with regards to his on-base percentage, but still hitting for about a 270, 275 between the regular season and the postseason. But with the Dodgers, the team is just stacked. Even though Shohei Ohtani has only hit a $138 here in the postseason, he was able to draw those 3 walks in game number 1. Teoscar Hernandez has a trio of bombs here in the postseason. Freddie Freeman got it going. He got his first home run of the playoffs yesterday. Will Smith, he's been a little bit banged up, but now he's back in the lineup. He overall for the season is already on 400 on base. Max Muncy makes just such a big impact for the Dodgers team. A 458 on base here in the postseason, and when he's been in the lineup versus out of the lineup, he's been able to make a full run half difference per game in terms of the run creation for the LA Dodgers, so that's very big. And for the Brewers, they did have all hands on deck with regards to the bullpen on Monday, with throwing Trevor McGill, Abner Uribe, Chad Patrick, Jared Koenig for at least 18 pitches apiece. Now they still have some nice bullets in the chamber, and they're going to have a guy in Freddie Peralta that's able to go deep into a game. But with Freddie Peralta, I always do have my trepidations and my issues with him, as he's got a 2.82 overall ERA for the regular season and the postseason, but during the regular season, he had a 3.65 fielding independent. That shows a little bit of regression coming here. Now, overall for the season, a sub-2 ERA at home, 171 is what it approximately was during the regular season, but 3.5 walks per 9 innings, that's a little bit concerning going against its Dodgers lineup, a Dodgers lineup that should be able to get to him, and a Dodgers bullpen that is very much revamped. I know that Roki Sasaki had his command issues yesterday, but still, you've got Emmett Sheehan now coming out of the bullpen. I don't necessarily trust in the likes of Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, those guys that were coming out of the bullpen before, and Clayton Kershaw. Let's call it what it is. He's had his postseason struggles, to say the least, but his Dodgers team now has a much, much better bullpen. And for the Brewers, they're still going to have, as I was mentioning before, a few nice pieces in the bullpen that they really didn't use up yesterday. You have to figure that if they get into a little bit of a tricky spot where they need some length, Tobias Myers is going to be all good to go. Grant Anderson has been relatively solid in the bullpen as well, sub 3.50 ERA overall for the season. So I do think that this is going to be a relatively tight game, but I do think that the Dodgers pull it off. And again, with that regression for Freddie Peralta, I do think that you get it over here. So I told it 7.3, so I'm taking the 7 over, and the Dodgers on the money line. That'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. A big thanks to our guy, Ben Wilson, for joining me in the last segment. If you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @G_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, in which we've got postseason games. Might take a day or two off when we have that long lull between the Championship Series and the World Series, but other than that, I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Did you know your credit card points and miles can lose value to inflation? Credit card companies often reduce the redemption value of your points and miles. Now, imagine a credit card with rewards that can grow in value. With the Gemini credit card, you can earn Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos instantly with no annual fee. Every swipe at the store or gas pump earns you instant rewards deposited straight to your account. Plus, sign up now for a $200 Bitcoin bonus to kickstart your rewards. Visit Gemini.com/card today. Check out the link in the description for more information on rates and fees. Again, if you're looking to invest in Bitcoin but don't know where to start, the Gemini credit card makes it easy.